Hello and welcome to Big Picture. I am Vishal Dahiya and today we will talk about the election manifestos of various political parties. Now, the campaigning for assembly elections in the state of Maharashtra and Haryana has come to an end and now the ball is in voters' court who will cast their vote on 21st of October. Just like every election, all political parties release their election manifesto for these two states as well. And the two major points which prominently featured in all these manifestos relate to agriculture and jobs. While in Haryana, all major political parties have promised reservation in jobs for locals, the opposition parties in both the states have promised loan waiver for farmers, and the ruling BJP has reiterated its promise of doubling farmers' income by 2022. So how does the election manifesto impact the voting behaviour, and how does political parties fare on the promises made once they are voted to power? For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests in the studio today. Let me first introduce the guests to you, beginning with Mr. K.V. Prasad, Senior Associate Editor, The Tribune. We also have with us Senior Journalist Mr. Ashok Tandon, and we are also joined by Mr. Anant Bagaitkar, Chief of News Bureau, Sakal Group of Newspapers. Welcome all of you gentlemen to Rajya Sabha TV studios. Let me begin with you, Mr. Prasad, and let's try and put things in perspective here. Manifestos are sort of a very common refrain nowadays in a common document. But if you look at these elections, one more feature which is there is that this time around, the manifestos have come a little bit late, as they come usually at least 15 days prior to voting or 20 days prior to voting. This time around, it has been late. So, keeping that aspect in mind, one, how important are manifestos for political parties and for the voters as well?
I think it's a fairly important document because that gives a vision plan of each party is trying to project for the people of the state, in particular right now in the assemblies of Haryana and Maharashtra. And in fact, if you notice over the past many times, people have stopped calling it manifestos or Ghoshna Patra. People have their own names. For instance, I think BJP called it Sankalp Patra and Shiv Sena called it Vachan Patra, that means a promise. So it's a different kind of a thing, probably trying to be different. As regards the question of delay, I think in these days of modern days of communication, when we almost instantly communication ideas and thoughts and processes, people do know that the idea of disseminating the important points of manifesto is much easier than it used to in the past, when you'd rely on a traditional form of communication, largely the print medium, and then came the television, and then the debates and discussions around that. I think that could be one reason. Also, finalization of some points, because for instance in Maharashtra, for the Shiv Sena, even though it's having an alliance with the BJP, came up with a separate manifesto because of differences on certain issues. So these do get reflected. But I think political parties do take it with the seriousness, and that's why periodically they come back to the people and say, look, we had promised so many points, and of this so many have been implemented or a few have not been done or whatnot. It's a promise and a vision of a party for the state in which it's contesting.
Okay. Vision, Mr. Tandon, and is rightly pointing out, these election manifestos, Sankalp Patras or Vachan Patras, they're considered to be the vision of that particular political party for the next 5 years if they're voted to power. But the question here is, how much does these election manifestos reflect that particular vision of that political party? And also, how much of it is taken on face value by the voters?
Well, I think over the years, people have started suspecting or being very skeptical about the manifestos. And that's why the manifestos over the years have lost that kind of grace or sheen which they used to have. What has actually come up nowadays in the election manifestos or whatever you may call it, that the freebies which you are promising. And that process started from Tamil Nadu, and now later on we have seen in practically every state. So once the freebies are being announced when we come to power, then the real issues are relegated to the background. But talking about the present election in Maharashtra and Haryana, I think one focal point in the manifesto or Sankalp Patra of all the political parties in both the states is water. As you very rightly said, agriculture. So irrigation, agriculture, water conservation, and the Maharashtra drought is a major issue. So all political parties have focused how are they going to deal with the issue of drought. Similarly in Haryana, because Haryana is also an agriculture state, water is a problem. That's why SYL canal comes up in practically every manifesto of all political parties, because that's a dispute between Punjab and Haryana. So farmers' distress, in fact, the issues of farmers, whether it is the remunerative price of their produce and other issues, dominate, because both states are predominantly agriculture states.
Okay.
So I think instead of promising free beef either in Haryana or in Maharashtra, I am glad that all political parties have refrained from that, and they are in fact now trying to be score over the other political parties how they are going to give these facilities for agriculture farmers or tackle drought, and similarly the issues pertaining to water in Haryana. So in a way, it's a very positive manifestos all political parties have given. But what has happened in Maharashtra is that an emotive issue of the promise made by in its Sankalp Patra by the BJP, Bharat Ratna to Savarkar and Jyotiba Phule and Savitribai Phule, that is now dominating as far as the discourse in the television channels is concerned. Unfortunately, the other issues, particularly the drought issue, which is very, very significant as far as Maharashtra is concerned, is not being taken up by the media.
Okay.
So sometimes what happens is, as I said, in some states like southern states, freebies used to dominate the discourse, and in some cases we have seen emotive issues dominating the agenda.
Okay.
So, but in that context, people take all these things with a pinch of salt. That is my understanding. And the elections are not really, people don't vote on the basis of the promise they have been given. They have their own assessment. For instance, in both the states, there is an incumbent government. So obviously people would be judging the performance of those government, which in fact is a very important issue. It's the first time that the incumbent government, both in Maharashtra and Haryana, are fighting the election on the basis of their performance. Because corruption, which used to dominate the election scene all over the country, is missing both in Haryana as well as in Maharashtra, because there is no corruption charge against either Manohar Lal Khattar or against Devendra Fadnavis.
Okay.
So in that context, opposition, I feel, is on a slippery ground, because they have no issue on which they can confront the two chief ministers on the basis of their performance.
Okay.
That is why either the agriculture issues or water conservation or women's safety is a big issue in Haryana. So all these things are there, but I think the non-performance, if at all it was there, should have been highlighted by the opposition, which they have failed to do. And of course, it's a good thing for both BJP in Haryana and Maharashtra that there is no corruption charge against the chief minister and their government, which is a big, big thing, because in India, people have largely are swayed away if there are corruption charges against the government.
Okay, so it is about the performance of the party which is in power for that much period as well. Mr. Bagaitkar, do you agree with the point made by Mr. Tandon here that the voters don't seem to be too much influenced by the promises made by political parties in the election manifestos? Not all of them, maybe some of them, but mostly the the performance of the outgoing government, and also whatever is the charges which are made at all, if there is anything from the opposition against the government.
No, absolutely, because performance of the government is very important, and voters definitely take it into their account and vote accordingly. But at the same time, they also look at the parties, what they are actually promising for the next 5 years. So on the one hand, we definitely see that nobody votes on the basis of the manifestos or whatever has been promised in the manifestos. But performance of the government of the last 5 years is definitely taken into the account, and people vote accordingly. That much we can say.
Okay.
But other things like performance, Mr. Ashokji was referring to the performance of the government in Maharashtra. The drought management, or even the of late, you all must have seen the reports in Maharashtra. There's the 3 districts in Maharashtra, that is mainly the Kolhapur, Satara and Sangli. They had devastating floods, and it was a man-made disaster in a way. Though there was rain, heavy rains, but at the same time remedies could have been done in time so that disaster and the whatever damage would not have been done.
Okay, so issues like that will
issues
also
like
dominate.
that will definitely dominate. And other thing, that in campaign what we are seeing in Maharashtra or in Haryana, instead of local issues, instead of addressing the local issues or the state issues, the leadership is addressing or just telling people what is happening at the national level. They are raising national issues,
Okay.
which actually in Maharashtra, means I come from Maharashtra, so people are actually not interested. Even a city like Mumbai, when our correspondent interviewed ordinary common citizens, they say we are not interested in these issues. As far as Mumbai is concerned, we are interested in common civic amenities issues. What are they going to do with the traffic jams?
Something which affects their daily life.
Absolutely, because it's an assembly election. It is not a national election. But when voters are looking at the leaders and when they are raising some emotive issues or some national issues, big issues, which are actually meant for the national election.
But the manifestos, Mr. Bagaitkar, the manifestos usually focus on the local issues only.
Yes, absolutely. But as we said earlier, that yes, manifestos, people read it. But at the same time, people say that in last manifesto, so much has been promised, but nothing has been done. As far as Maharashtra is concerned, I can say about that Marathwada, which is a very drought-prone area, and there the government has not actually, come up to the mark while managing the drought.
Okay.
And there is a kind of, people are not happy with the performance of the government.
So we'll have to wait and watch till 24th whether
Yes.
that becomes a major issue. But drought, as you said, and water availability of water, as Mr. Tandon also pointed out, is a major issue. But one point which Mr. Bagaitkar raised, and I would like to bring in Mr. Prasad here, the national versus local issues. That aspect, the manifestos do talk about local issues, but as Mr. Bagaitkar is saying, we've also seen it that sometimes star campaigners or political parties do talk about national issues as well.
Well, certainly they will talk of national issues, but what is the predominance? Let's remember one thing: all politics is local. Eventually, it starts from where happened, because it's a bread and butter issue. It's issues that affects our day-to-day life, what's being done, and an assembly is primarily limited to the state, and the policies of the state government would affect the people living in the state. Now, for instance, if Maharashtra or Haryana has promised 80%, Maharashtra, I think the Congress has promised 80% local population the domicile people to get access to jobs. Now, that is something which people are in a state where, and then I think the BJP has promised, BJP government, BJP in its manifesto says $1 trillion economy. Now, some of them are obviously in line with the national policies of the BJP. If the Prime Minister is talking of $5 trillion economy, if UP also made a similar reference some time ago, and Maharashtra, which is being a industrialized state, a state which is the financial capital of this country, Mumbai, so all these factors add up.
And that's quite but natural as well. If the same party is ruling at the center and the
so
state government as well,
it
they'll
has
try
to
and
be
have that
dotted with
correlation.
But now, for instance, again, if you look at they have promised piped water in the water hit areas, the drought hit areas. Now, it's obviously people look forward to something like that because it eases, but is it possible? Can it be done? Will it be done? These are questions that linger for a long time. National issues, how much is going to affect me on a day-to-day basis? Obviously, everybody wants safety, security. You don't have to say that. And a large number of people from Maharashtra contribute to the services, be it the defense, army, navy, air force, and also the paramilitary.
And same goes for Haryana as well.
Yeah. So these are two states where these issues will find resonance. But will that dominate? Will that be the issue that is going to be the clincher? Now, that's something with the people of the state will have to look at it.
Okay. Mr. Tandon, that aspect, national issues versus local issues, and also one point which Mr. Prasad made here about that underlying theme and that, almost commonality in all political parties' manifesto in Haryana about promising job to the locals up to a level of 95%.
No, first of all, see, when the national leaders campaign, say for instance the Prime Minister or the BJP President Amit Shah or Rahul Gandhi or Dr. Manmohan Singh, obviously they will be talking about the national issues like the economy or security or Article 370. So they can't avoid those issues because they are there at the helm of the affair at the center. So obviously these national issues will come up and the media will also highlight that. When it comes to the state level leaders, whether they are the chief ministers or the opposition leaders, they do talk about the local issues. But if the party in power, like the chief minister in Maharashtra and Haryana, they would obviously talk in terms of the central schemes which are going to benefit the people of Haryana and Maharashtra, like the Ayushman Bharat or Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana or housing for everybody. So all these obviously would be reflected in the state leaders' campaign as well.
Okay.
Now coming to the core issue of jobs and the women's security, in particularly in Haryana, so the state leaders have to talk about that, which they are talking. But the narrative dominates, which dominates is the sentiment of the local people, the problem which they face day-to-day basis. Like as I said, in Maharashtra, normally a drought-prone state is having floods this time. So water has become an issue either way, whether it is water conservation or water management, or whether it is irrigation. In Haryana, again, water is an issue, and therefore they talk in terms of SYL canal. All political parties will be talking SYL canal, which has not been resolved over the last 50 years. But as I said, people want the local issues to dominate, which sometimes they don't. Like the women's safety or security in Haryana is a big issue. All political parties at the local level may be talking about it, and the people also want promises. What kind of promise the political parties are making as far as their day-to-day life is concerned. So I think it becomes a mixed bag, and all the elections in various states, assembly election, all these things we have seen, both national level for election issues as well as the regional or the local issues, they come up, but people sometimes are confused and therefore they have to go with the popular image of the leader, and the leader in the state, whether it is an incumbent chief minister or the opposition leader, if they happen to be popular, and one yardstick of popularity in Indian politics is honesty, integrity. If the allegation of corruption sticks on any particular party leader, obviously that becomes an issue. So therefore, the personalities also do matter, whether it is an assembly election or at the national level. And in this election, the image, integrity and personality of Devendra Fadnavis and Manoj Lal Khattar are at stake, and they are pretty sure because there is no allegation of corruption against them, and by and large, performance wise, people would be judging them better than we discuss here in the studio. But I think the personality of the leaders is also a very, very important factor as far as assembly elections are concerned.
So, Mr. Bagaitkar, personalities also do matter. Issues obviously will be there, local, national as well. But what are the those people who are the faces of their respective political parties? What is their face value out there?
Absolutely, because face will matter. Face of the leadership will matter, but at the same time, if that face is, if the image is tarnished by the people around you, it also affects your political prospects. So it is also a case where you are taking people from other parties which are maybe tainted, maybe some allegations are against them, and still you are claiming that you are very clean, your image is very good, you have performed well. That will not, actually
So the political parties will have to be, very cautious there as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's not about their own leader, but whom they get in the party, that is also important.
A man is known by the company he keeps.
So
obviously, it will actually matter in the political electoral outcome.
It will also matter in the electoral outcomes. But one, important question here as well, Mr. Prasad, is, and this is sometimes raised by the critics, written as well, is what is missing in the election manifestos. And what is missing, what they say, is that the sanctity of it, the legal sanctity, in a mean that, a political party is making, say, for example, 20 promises in election manifesto. But what binds that political party to those promises if voted to power?
Well, that dilemma remains. But as I said, over the last few years, even though people have lesser appreciation or lesser belief in what is promised in the manifestos, but still political parties try and come back to the people and say, look, we have fulfilled it. Now, it's like politics is all about perception. So, it's the perception that matters. For instance, a political party A, which may be ruling for a fine number of 5 years, says we have promised this, look, the statistics show. But if in the public perception feel it's not true, then it's not true. Even though statistics may tell you something else. So perception is always plays a big game, very important in question of politics and how it looks people's voting. Like corruption. Corruption is an issue which has always figured in elections for a very long time. So it is the perception at the one point of time when people say we have had enough of this. We need some clean break from all that. So you obviously come with a new set of people who people believe will be clean and offer a transparent government. That's what the whole idea is.
Okay.
So I think this is bound to be there. People will make promises, and then not all promises are meant to be kept.
Is that why, the name, in the beginning you said that the parties have started changing the name of their manifestos now, calling them Sankalp Patra, Vachan Patra. All that is to try and send that message to the general population, to the voter, that yes, we do mean these promises.
If you look at the manifestos in particular, I mean, I'm not saying just in Maharashtra, any state, every party details a lot. Because it has to appeal to every segment of the society who have to be told that, look, if we come to power, we're going to do this for you.
Okay.
And it may not hold for good for everybody. I mean, everybody would read what applies to him or her or his group or his category. But a political party will have to say, we are going to take all of you along to us.
Okay.
How much of that appeals to you is where the voter would then come and decide.
Okay, it is for the voter to decide. Mr. Bagaitkar, you wanted to say something?
No, there are some parties who actually do not bring out their manifestos.
Yeah,
and still they have ruled some big states in this country. That is also a phenomenon we have experienced.
Okay. So Mr. Tandon, how do you look at this situation? As Mr. Bagaitkar has also pointed out, there are some parties which don't come up with manifestos, and then there is this question attached with this missing thing in the manifesto about its legal sanctity, or what binds the political party to that particular promise.
No, as I said in the beginning, earlier manifesto used to have an impact on the electorate. People used to wait the manifesto to be released. Even if I may say so, the media also used to wait for the manifesto, and the media used to analyze each and every promise made by political parties. Nowadays, even the media is not taking the manifestos very seriously. So they are not analyzing it. And that's why the catchphrase in the manifesto or Sankalpat will become the talk of the town or the debate in the television channel. So therefore, the manifestos as a whole, I think, have lost their relevance to some extent, because people have, take it with a pinch of salt. Well, we know all political parties will be making certain promises, but the factors which influence the electorate are sometimes outside the manifesto also. And therefore, manifestos have in a way become a ritual which every political party has to do it. They do it also, and people, they don't take it that seriously. That is why sometimes the issues which concern the people directly, like corruption, invariably corruption dominates and tops the agenda as far as people are concerned. And they look for clean image man. They know all political parties make promises, but at least we need a leader who is clean, whose integrity is there, so we can trust him and he or she will deliver it. So therefore, some certain issues are in the focus, and people go by that perception, which are the issues in focus. And in that context, I would say the promises made, like as I said in Haryana, Aswile Canal issue, we have been talking about it practically in every election. So people have given up that we know it will not be solved by either party. And similarly, drought management, water management in Maharashtra is a big issue, and these issues have been there in every election as far as Maharashtra is concerned. So therefore, when it boils down to very few top issues. I think corruption dominates the narrative in Indian politics. It has been proved in the past We know how in 2014 the UPA government was voted out. I think the sole issue in that election was corruption.
Okay, so clearly, as our panelists are pointing out, it is a very interesting mix of the promises made by political parties, the perception game in the election arena, and the posturing also of all these political parties, depending upon what the voter thinks is important for him or her. But an election manifesto, as our panelists said, is not only a set of promises, but also a vision document of that political party about what that party will do if voted to power for the next 5 years. Whether or not that set of document influences the voters entirely is still to be seen. But yes, it does have some influence in some places and might not have. But let's wait and watch for Maharashtra and Haryana till 21st and then finally till 24th of October, when we have the results out as to whether or not the voters have been influenced by what is written in the election manifesto or what is being said by the leaders in their public rallies or some other issues out there. We'll come back again on Monday with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.